So, how to pretend systematic racism doesn't exist? Coming right up. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Conversations Logic Reason. And as always, thank y'all for joining me today. Greatly appreciate it. So, I've often said that one of the biggest problems facing black people in America today, Americanized blacks, is white guilt. And white guilt is such a stumbling block that the only thing worse for black people is black victimhood or black inferiority, whatever which one you want to call it. They're pretty much the same. And the reason why white guilt is so bad is because it perpetuates black victimhood. I often say that black people, and you can look at the evidence that shows this, that whenever black people hear race, typical blacks, what I would call the brainwashed blacks, whenever they hear race, it's like the brains just shut down, and any attempt to try to reason with them is pointless because they get so in their feelings and emotional about race, and that's not good for black people to be in that state. Now, white guilt basically helps perpetuate that state and helps keep black people in that mindless state, and that's the problem with white guilt. Now, as y'all can see, I'm black, right? Completely black, right? There's no CGI, no special effects. It's not tropical thunder. I'm a black person, been black all of my life. And being that I'm black, obviously I have black people in my family, and the majority of the blacks in my family are the typical Americanized blacks. They were born and raised and indoctrinated to vote for the Democratic Party, even though it's idiotic and it doesn't make any sense. And I was having a discussion with one of my family members, and anytime I get into a discussion with people about all this racist black folk, with this racism, white supremacy, I don't care who you are, I always ask them, explain to me where is all this racism and how racism is stopping you. Of course, I never get a response. However, one of my family members, he gave me a link to a video by the title of How to Pretend Systematic Racism Doesn't Exist. And this is a video from some white guy by the name of Some More News. And really, it should be Some More Bull, because that's pretty much the level of the quality of that video. That's supposed to basically prove, that systematic racism does exist, despite of us conservatives saying that it doesn't exist. That was the video. Now, I'll post a link in the video. The link in the description of the video if you want to watch it. But this video was about an hour and 8 minutes long. And honestly, I watched about 20 to 25 minutes because there's only so much bullshit I can take. And like I said, in that 20 minutes, this video is just blown through my bullshit threshold. And I turned it off. Because the reason why I even started watching the video, because I was hoping that I would see something new from this white guy, and it's the same nonsense. And I'm not going to watch an hour's worth of some white person repeating the same nonsense that I hear race hustlers repeat all the time. So I'm going to comment on the 20 or 25 minutes or so I watched. Now, I'm going to probably cover everything I jotted down in 2 hours, because this dude ran through some stuff. He did that ambush tactic of, typical of the left, run through a bunch of topics in a short time span. Within 5 minutes, he could easily cover 3 to 5 topics, which means that he doesn't go deeply into none of the topics, which means that they can't. Leftists can't go deep into any topics because their argument would just start unraveling before them, and they're going to do what's best for their argument. Now, another tactic that he used in this video, which is I would say probably the most common widely used tactic of leftists, and that's the disparity is the evidence. In other words, I always say that depravity doesn't equal to, or disparity doesn't equal to depravity. Just because there's a disparity somewhere doesn't mean there was some depraved, evil group that created it. Okay, you have to show the evidence or the reason why the disparity exists. The disparity itself is not the example, but that's what this guy did. And it was, again, this comment in this video that you will see. But anyway, let me get to it. Now, he starts off with, COVID affects black people more. Again, a disparity. And that's this evidence of systematic racism in America. Well, first of all, there's nothing systematic about that. Second of all, again, where is the evidence that black people were affected more by COVID at a higher rate? Now, keep in mind that this video came out more than a year ago. Once you get to a year, past a year, then YouTube is just going to tell you a year. So you don't know exactly how, it's more than a year out, but you don't know exactly how far out. But back then, black people probably were getting COVID at a higher rate, and that was the case at one point in time. But just because it exists doesn't mean it exists because some evil, racist white folks. Show me the evidence that these white people were going amongst black people and shooting black people up with COVID, much in the same way that those black people were shot up with syphilis during the Tuskegee experiment. Until you show me that evidence, you cannot say that the disparity between COVID with quote blacks and everybody else is evidence of racism. That's not racism. Could it possibly be because maybe black people were doing more of what it takes to get COVID? Maybe not practicing social distancing, even though the rumor to where social distancing came from is just laughable. It's almost a joke. Were black people wearing masks, and were they properly wearing masks? Were black people more likely to gather in large crowds? Again, show me the evidence that blacks were getting affected by COVID at a higher rate is because of racism. The fact that it exists is not racism in itself. Then he goes into, again, systematic racism and how it's hidden from visibility, which makes absolutely zero sense. I don't care how hidden it supposedly is. It's going to be present, and if it's present, you can tell us where it is. The reason why he say that systematic white supremacy is hidden from visibility is because, well, there's no evidence of it. In today's society, there's no systematic white supremacy, no systematic racism, no systematic laws holding black people back. You can't point to it, and this is why they all have to keep falling back on the disparity. This is why the disparity has to be their proof, but it's not. Then he goes on to talk about racism from Fox News. Now, I asked what racism? He gave a couple of clips. Actually, he didn't give any evidence. No, he didn't give any evidence. He didn't post any clips of any racism on Fox News. He just assumed that it's racist because they say something, a message that's conservative. There's nothing racist on Fox. There's nothing more racist on Fox than there is on CNN, than there is on any other TV station. So no, Fox is not racism. That's idiotic nonsense. He didn't provide a single shred of evidence. No surprise there. Then he went on with this, Ben Shapiro wants to kill the objectives, right? When he was talking, Ben Shapiro was talking about like the word social justice, right? Well, we have justice in America, and if you got to add social to it, well, what's the difference between justice and social justice? And if it's justice, why you have to add social to it? So what do you need the adjective for to justice? Let's just have justice. Now, he basically used a stupid analogy, one of the dumbest analogies that I've ever heard, and he used a baby example, right? If we take the word baby and we put cute in front of it, somehow the baby is evil and adjectives are evil and need to die. That's completely idiotic. Again, justice and justice. Why you have to add social to justice? And if it's social justice, then who is policing and rendering these decisions if it's social as opposed to just regular or any justice? Again, that's just completely idiotic nonsense. And then he goes with the blacks get more time for the same crime, right? Now, I've done a video on this, race hustle rhetoric. How many years ago? Probably 2 years ago. And I can give you the link to the description, but I'm not going to do that. I can just tell you how that's utter nonsense. First of all, again, this is a perfect example of disparities. Now, Do black people get more time for the same crime? Well, yes, they do. Is it because of racism? No. There's various reasons why black people get more time for the same crime. The number one reason why black people get more time for the same crime because black people commit crime at a higher rate than any other group. So if black people generally commit high crime at higher rates in certain clustered areas, therefore, more than likely, a black person, when they stand before a judge, on average, is going to have a longer criminal arrest record, something that's taken into consideration. Now, if you have two people, I would say person A and person B, you got both of these people arrested for the same crime. Let's say a bag of marijuana, caught with possession of a bag of marijuana. You got person A has never been in trouble with the law before. Person B has been repeatedly in trouble with the law. Who are they going to deal with more harshly? Obviously, they're going to deal with person B because person B is consistently being in trouble with the law. And then there's other things such as factors such as like mandatory minimums. And the reason why mandatory minimum laws are enacted are such policies like heavy policing, like stop and frisk, is implemented because of high crime rates. These are all attempts to deal with high crime rates. Generally, it would happen in certain areas. And if you are arrested and they would for committed a crime and they enact mandatory minimums on you, you're going to get a higher sentencing than a person somewhere who commit the same crime where there is no mandatory minimums or there is no heavy policing. You're less likely to be caught. So that's another factor to take into consideration. Now, another factor to be taken into consideration is the fact that if you have these areas, these urban areas, high crime, high poverty, high single parent households without fathers, and you have all these people who committing crime at a higher rate in certain areas, clustered in areas, these people stand before a judge more often, and more than likely they're going to need public defenders, which means that if they're going to need public defenders and all the public defenders have so many cases they have to deal with, they have a backlog, all the time they push for plea bargains, which means that a black person is going to get more, or whoever it is going to get more time because then the prosecutors know this and they're going to push for more time to pad their stats. This is something that is common that happens generally in urban areas because that's where you often see this situation happening. Again, that's another factor that goes into why black people get more time for the same crime. It's not because of systematic white supremacy, it's because behavior. Okay, moving on with my notes. Now, he brings forth this analogy. Man, I'm telling you, this dude is, from what I saw, he is absolutely terrible with analogies. He brings up this, if I punch, if I punch somebody in the face and I kick him in the balls, they can't use it against me. I'm like, what? That makes absolutely no sense. Like, that's the stupidest analogy ever. And this was basically when he was bringing up Ben Shapiro. When Ben Shapiro was talking about the civil rights legislation that's passed. Sure, there was injustice against black people, but we passed the civil rights legislation. Okay, the civil rights are here. Black people have civil rights. We should be moving on. That was the analogy that he used to try. Again, this guy needs to leave the analogies to somebody else. Then he takes Ben Shapiro out of context. Looking at my notes here. He takes Ben Shapiro out of context. And this is involving when Ben Shapiro kind of said that, the belief of systematic white supremacy is a conspiracy theory, a race conspiracy theory. He's like, if you keep crying about racism and systematic white supremacy, but nobody can ever point to the systematic racist laws that are holding black people back, then the belief of systematic racism is a conspiracy theory. It is. So, like I say, if you believe in like the title of this video, if he believes this, you got to provide me the evidence. Show me the law that's stopping a black person from doing nothing. But no, it's all the disparity. And we're going to use the disparity as evidence, just a common theme with the left. Okay, moving on. Then again, another disparity. He goes on and on about the income disparity between blacks and whites, that, this is the evidence The evidence of systematic white supremacy of this disparity between black and white people. Again, the disparity is not the evidence. You have to show me and prove to me that there's a system and show me the laws that are keeping black people back and holding black people back. There is no laws doing this, so it can't be systematically. There's nothing systematic holding black people back. That's ridiculous. And again, as far as inequality and disparity, inequality and disparity is everywhere in society. Everywhere. I don't care what you're talking about. There's going to be some disparity. It could be NFL. You got the good teams and you have the bad teams. NBA, good teams, bad teams. You look at academics in America. Right now, Asian people are outperforming white people. Not because there's no racism. White folks are being racist against themselves because Asian people do more of what it takes to have better grades. That's why, again, it has nothing to do with racism. The disparity in of itself is not the evidence. You got to provide the evidence proving why the disparity exists. But I've also said the left, they only focus on the what, and who cares about the how and why in their minds. Again, moving on, trying to get through this. Now, Ben Shapiro, I remember Ben Shapiro had this iconic line that he put in this when he was a part of this debate that took place like 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. You know, he said, and he was asked again, the moderator, about a disparity. These people love their disparities. Why does the income disparity exist between white people? And Ben Shapiro gave that iconic line because it has everything to do with culture and nothing to do with race. Or it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And of course, the people on the panel, the two black people, right? You got the black chick, the light skinned black chick with a pro black afro, and then they have a black guy from London. You tell me you couldn't get a black victim from America? But they start with that, that car lot dancing bubble thing with all this stuff here, that foolishness. And then Ben Shapiro comes in and shut it down. And let me get my notes here. He basically said, well, if you believe it's racism and white supremacy, then explain to me why black kids aren't graduating from high school. Why is it that black people are shooting each other at a rate that's far excessive than any other group or race in America? Why is it that 13% of the population is responsible for 50% of the murders? Why is it that we have such high incarceration rates amongst black people? And why is the single motherhood rate so high amongst black people, which we have tons of evidence to show the ramifications of high single parent households without father? And he pretty much shut it down. Now, this guy, some more news, claims that all of these issues are a result of systematic racism. That's bullshit. That's not a lie. That's not even a damn lie. That is a goddamn lie. There's tons of evidence showing that none of these issues have absolutely nothing to do with no systematic racism. Because if that were the case, each and every one of these issues that been brought up would have been going on with black people from the time that slavery was over and we were amongst ourselves. We should have been killing and shooting each other and having babies out of wedlock. None of this started happening until the Great Society and the welfare programs, when black females they chose welfare over black men. That's when black community went downhill, and this is where the culture began, of the culture of nonsense that teaching to our children. Has nothing to do with no systematic racism. That's the lie that's being perpetrated. But then the left have no problem telling lies. Now, that's it for this video, because like I said, I like to keep my videos short and sweet. I don't like my videos to go long. If I have a video that's 10 minutes, 8-10 minutes, that's long for me. Because if it's taking that long, then you ain't doing something right. So I'm going to come back with part 2, covering the rest of the notes that I jotted down at 20 minutes, y'all. And as always, until next time.